Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Alderman, here. Alderman Campbell,
Here.
Alderman Flores,
Here.
Alderman Galloway is absent. Alderman Gardner,
Here.
Alderman Hudson.
Here.
We have 5 Alderman present. We have 4.
Yes, sir. So I have changed the review minutes of July 5th and July 8th respectively. If so, are there any amendments or motion to approve? All right, just if you'll speak loud, this is we're not.
On the special session minutes, I was absent.
Thank you.
That is the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I make a motion to approve the minutes of July. On the back page, where it has the date, June 21, should actually be July 5th.
Okay.
I would, I'll move that we approve the July 5th. Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Hudson, second by Alderman Campbell to approve the July 5th minutes as amended. All those in favor? And then on the July 8th, any other amendments?
Motion to approve the minutes of July 8th.
Motion was made by Alderman Gardner, second by Alderman Flores, to approve the July 8th meeting minutes as amended. All those in favor? Abstain? Very good. All right, there are local ceremony matters. We have scheduled guests, Secretary of State, showing Christian Camp. You're welcome. One more time. You're good.
Yeah, they're red light, pretty good.
Red's
Red is
good.
good.
Red is good.
Red is good unless you're in the county.
Okay. So good evening. It is always a pleasure to be here and to update you all. Just submitted the great report to you. This is going in our board packet this week. We have it done the week prior, but I just came back from vacation, so I late submission. Of the activities that have been going on, the biggest I mentioned briefly last month, but just really wanted to give you some details just on the process of the project line submittal. I know I spoke about that on this was a third round request from an extra lead that we received through the Missouri Partnership and then the Springfield Regional Economic Partnership. And what this looks like when we coordinate. A lot of these tasks are done behind the scenes. And so day to day, you never really see the work that goes into this. But we spent almost an entire week coordinating with staff here at the city, also with the city of Nixa and county assessor as well, as the presiding commissioner, to put this package together. It ended up being 18 pages in total, and I know I referenced it in my last update, but it was such a strong front being able to submit a regional letter with having Mayor Jackson and Mayor Steele and presiding Commissioner Phillips all on the same letter saying we are aligning as Christian County and we want to put our investment forward. So if any of you need help or assistance in longhand calculating your property tax, I'm all workshop on that and would be happy to. So we are just waiting to hear. We submitted that back to the Springfield Regional Economic Partnership with the deadline as requested, and that turnaround time we had 4 days to complete that package, and we're able to just put all things on deck and get that done. Other report specifically for the city of Ozark, so the market study is moving forward. I have been working hand in hand with the long-term recovery counselor for the Southeast Missouri Council of Governments, Chris Gimpy, and Mr. Childers and I worked on that scope of work, outlining that the bids were sent out, and the consultant that was selected for that service is Thomas P. Miller and Associates out of Indianapolis, Indiana. They did submit that to us for final approval, and their expertise and their client list just really seemed to suit our needs. So we have now set up bi-weekly meetings, and so I handle those directly with the consultant. We have provided him all of the back-end studies as far as the strategies report, the additional studies that Ozark has completed, so that they're looking at all of this as they really weigh this community's viability for the transportation corridor. Again, this is a market study specific to the industries of e-commerce and distribution, and really tying into the freight network that we find ourselves on, which Highway 65. And this was all made possible through a grant through an economic development administration and Central being a facilitator on that. Project Mirabella is something that is moving forward. We are just really trying to work hand in hand with the design professionals the developer has selected. We have communicated multiple times on what the developer needs to produce in order for those discussions to continue, and have also submitted resources should they need those to help quantify the economic impact that they are proposing through this mixed-use development. In addition, we had a brokerage firm reach out with a client that wants to potentially locate here in Ozark. They did not make that known to us. So what we do in those instances when we're working directly with the broker and their clients are confidential, we submit whatever data that they need and try to pull all of those reports together. So in that instance, they needed a traffic report specific. We collected those and submitted the OTO traffic reports specifically for the 3rd Street corridor. And in addition, pulled through our state partners the disposable income report for the community of Ozark specifically. So we submitted that, and again, just waiting to hear if we can provide additional assistance for that business. Under the business retention and expansion section, there is a local headquartered business and it's interested in expanding and adding a retail location in Ozark specifically. So we were able to connect him with the broker that had the listing identified where they were to locate. So that was an instance where they picked a spot in town, and it just happened to be a very specific instance and Joanna had it listed. So under regionalism and alignment, again, we work to kind of promote community with all of our community and county partners. And so Mark Wallace on our team has been working with all of the PIOs across the county on a video production initiative requested by Commissioner Phillips, and have been taking bids and looking through the vetting process on that to really get good marketing materials. In addition, you don't see it in this report, but we will be submitting with the approval of our executive committee. We were able to purchase a full page plus a third in the Missouri Site Selection magazine, really highlight that's going to go out. And that's got a shelf life of 2 years. So this is distributed to all of the major site consultants across the U.S., as well as high-level decision makers and corporate levels. And we approved to purchase that ad specific in the editorial section of Workforce, really establishing and taking ownership of the space that we already occupy, being such a great location in Missouri for remote and teleworking communities. And then lastly, the other thing that I want to note is that we are working just as a convener really with SIMPA. We are an affiliate member, as you all know, we are not a government entity. Through their EDA assistance, they can facilitate for us at no charge our American Rescue Act priority section. And so we are coordinating with not only Ozark, but all of the cities across the county, as well as the county themselves, to hopefully align all of our visions and set some priorities on the ARPA funds together. And again, we're just really serving as a convener in that, just trying to get all of those communities to the table. So I'm happy to provide any additional information or questions that you may have, but it's looking good as we enter into our next fiscal year in July, and it's always a pleasure to be of service. Any questions? All right. Thank you all.
Appreciate it. We'll on to the first reading of the bills and resolutions. Mr. Floyd.
Place bill 1380, Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Gardner, to place bill number 3280 on its first reading by title description. All those in favor?
An ordinance amending the zoning code official map by changing the zoning classification of certain properties located at 4151 North State Highway.
Yes, the application is for an amendment to the zoning. Existing zoning of the property is C2 commercial. Request is to rezone the property as R1C single family residential. The conference plan did note the property recommended zoning of commercial based on its existing zoning. The surrounding zonings of the area are, it ranges from agricultural, multifamily, office, two-family, and such. The existing property is considered a legal non-conforming property and is a single-family residence today. It has been utilized for that use. This rezoning complies with the zoning ordinances. The owner does wish to utilize this property as a single-family residence, and that's why they requested this zoning. At the time of the planning and zoning meeting, there was no opposition to this request. There was a mention of the concern of downzoning. The staff does not have any of that concern based on its use today, and if the owner does desire to approve this at a later date, they would have to go through the zoning process. Staff and the commission did recommend approval of this application.
Questions or comments from the board? Yes, sir.
Just to comment, I'm very familiar with that. It used to be our office, and I know it's a very good commercial spot, but it is clear a single family residence. That's what it was built for, and it's the use for that, intermittent sense. So I think it's a good use, good change.
I noticed that they're asking for R1 state. Does this mean that most likely that they want to sell it out of property later?
No, there's no discussion or intention at this time to subdivide the property. That was just what we determined within the request of appropriate zoning for single family use.
And if they did decide to subdivide it, that would come forward.
Not necessarily if it's administrative or a minor subdivision. A lot of times those are administrative process. In this case, it probably would be, unless there's a lot of utility extensions, because I don't think it's large enough to go through a major subdivision, which would be 4 more lots. But if it was a major subdivision, then yes, it would come back before the board, potentially look at a rezone.
Well, R1 state is 2,000, and this property is a little over 80,000.
It's a 1.88 acres, so yeah, it'll be just right about there. So potentially they could, depending on if they try to preserve the residence, the accessory structure, and how it's done.
I guess this question is just, I'm just throwing this out there. I thought, it doesn't matter to me. I don't have, it doesn't matter if you certify it. But if there's anyone who knows somebody who I should certify it, I like that. I'd give that a thought before our next meeting.
I would like to clarify that in today's ordinances, if someone would want to do, like Mr. Garber had said about an office space, we wouldn't necessarily go through a rezoning. We do it as a conditional use for home occupation. So we wouldn't actually go through the process of rezoning a single family property in today's ordinance.
Well, that's kind of your question, and I know RLC, we are not restricted when it comes to the uses that are around single family. Well, so it would be a conditional use if it were to be utilized as a residential with a home occupation in there. And I think that would be safe to say that even the way that it sits on the lot, you have a lot, kind of like a deep lot on the front, sitting towards the back. And I would assume that just based on the zoning rules that we have in our RLC, even if you wanted to do anything in front of accessory buildings or anything, probably have to go through, maybe not the board, but you still have to go through the zoning process because of the restrictions of the RLC. I would think.
Yeah. The way it says today, there would be nothing as far as accessory structure built in front of the residence, so they all have to be pushed to the rear. But based on the application, or the applicant's desire, they have to use this as a single family residence. That's why they acquired the property. And based on the commercial zoning, it requires a commercial loan to acquire the property. And I think, yeah, he is here tonight, so he can address any of the details about it.
Just my question. Thank you. Sure.
Any other questions from the board regarding this bill? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for the board this time? Yes, sir. Will you come up? Just hit the button on the microphone, give your name and address to the clerk. If you want to write it up. Blake, you're good.
Right there, 4151 North State Highway. Me and my wife and my child are the owners of the property. Like I said, I won't be very well, I can't follow that presentation, but we didn't buy the house for a residence. We plan on staying there forever. We don't want to subdivide. We don't want to put a business in front of it. We love the house. I'm an outside of town type of guy, so we got the shop so I can have my tools and whatnot in. They got her a nice big house and the kid in a great big yard. So that's why we fell in love with it, but ran into a lot of problems buying it. Had to go commercial, and we burned pretty much everything we had to get a commercial loan. So our hope here is to get it switched over to residential, so we can refinance the residential loan. Hopefully, a lot easier. That's why.
See if I have any questions for the applicant. Thank you for appreciate it. There's no one on Zoom tonight, is that correct? All right, well, if there's no other comments, someone else in the audience that wants to speak on this bill? All right, we'll hold it over to the next legislative session.
Let's go through to the law, especially for my time restriction.
Florida, second all, opposed, please bill number 3281, first reading by title description. All those in favor?
An ordinance approving the preliminary plat for Northtown Park subdivision and authorizing the director of planning and development to accept the dedication of all those streets and easements in the city of Ozark, Missouri, as shown in the preliminary plat upon the applicant filing the recorded final plat that substantially conforms to the preliminary plat, and authorizing the city clerk to sign the final plat upon compliance with the terms of this ordinance.
Mr. Smith.
Yes, this application is for the preliminary plat for Northtown Park. The applicant has revised the prior approved preliminary plat to incorporate the additional properties, and that was annexing zone a few months ago. The revision will assist with alleviating a lot of the traffic concerns that were brought up the last time. The preliminary plat does conform to R1C zoning that's approved. There are no additional overlay districts that affect this property. There is a future OTL link trail that was identified in the area. The applicant has planned to dedicate that trail to the property. Staff did receive approval from the Ozark Special Road District for the future access to Pheasant Road. All staff's and third-party review comments have been satisfied. At the planning and zoning meeting, there was no public attendance in opposition or in favor. No one at all for this application. Like I said, all the comments have been satisfied, and staff did recommend approval, along with the planning and zoning commission did recommend approval of this preliminary.
Any other staff comments? Members of the board, any comments? Mr. Garza.
I've got one question, Cameron, maybe for you or Mr. Levine, but on page 3 of the preliminary retention report, something just caught my eye there. I'm not sure if I'm understanding it right. It said this analysis, the repeated analysis provided at this time is for the capacity serving Northtown Park only. And I remember during discussions early on, that there was some comments made about whether or not the detention for this project would also help alleviate some of the outflow from current Grand Haven. And so would somebody tell me if that's still the case?
Yeah, I'll let the applicant address that, but there are discussions with the city on a side project about a Grand Haven, so for the detention basin.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and go to the board comments. Sure, yes, sir.
The last time we spoke, I think it was at the rezoning, there was some issue with that well, that all.
That's all been resolved. My understanding, and I'll let them clarify, but I believe that well is not on their property.
I've got a few questions. In reference to what Alderman Gardner was talking about, the Grand Haven subdivision and the Grunewald property, I assume that would also have to be figured into the overall detention system, whatever we want to call it.
I'll let them clarify that, but my understanding is their detention really is to serve their development, that they wouldn't address and handle off-site water coming to the property and trying to contain development for that.
Means such as Grand Haven. And
That's what, I'll let them clarify the details of how that will go through.
okay. And the other part of that is, which I didn't see mentioned in this document, overlooked, there's a lot of information there. Is the potential for the school. I assume the school will have to do their own detention pond and release whatever water they're allowed to release.
Yeah, I'm not sure the details of that original basin from Grand Haven, that development, I don't know that.
It may should.
Yeah, our public works director is here, who might be able to clarify that as well, but I don't know the details of the school.
You want to go ahead and take care of all the water, because I do have a few more questions.
If you've got some that Mr. Smith or Mr. Parsons, right, they're gonna get it from that route, and we'll bring Mr. Bobby in. The rest of the water questions.
Actually, this is probably Mr. Bobby's question here. Let me just check. I think you're all on the for the applicant.
Any other questions for our staff? Mr. Parsons, did you want to add anything at this point? He's going to hit it all. All right, I'm going to turn the floor to you, sir. I'm going to just go ahead and get the name and address.
Dave Bodine with Technical Design Consultants, 304 West Erie Street in Springfield.
You may be one right
Good evening, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I represent Fortress Land Development LLC, on the Northtown Park project. This project consists of 133 single-family lots on approximately 49 acres. Property is zoned R1C, and all of the lots are laid out to meet the standards set forth for R1C. Preliminary plat has been extensively reviewed by the city's planning department, the city's public works department, and the city's independent consultant to make sure that all the aspects of the proposed project meet city standards. Please note that the city staff has based their review, based on this review, is recommending approval of the preliminary plat. When this project was brought forward for annexation and zoning, there were several neighbors who spoke against the project, most of whom were residents from Pear Tree Estates or homeowners downstream from the site. As is typical with development, their main concerns were traffic and stormwater. Regarding their traffic concerns, we obtained the services of Mr. Earl Newman, who's a traffic study of the development. Mr. Newman is the premier authority for traffic engineering, 35 years of experience. Just to summarize, Mr. Newman's study shows that all of the existing infrastructure, street infrastructure in the area has the capacity to serve Northtown Park. Did make one recommendation for our development, which we have into our construction drawings, where he designated a right turn and left turn coming out of Cobblestone Drive at the Pheasant Road connection. Regarding stormwater concerns, the largest issue we had to overcome wasn't our issue at all, as previously discussed. But was the issue with Grand Haven's existing lake or driveway.
There's an existing outlet structure there that was never completed during construction, so there's no, our terminology, we call it a weir. There was never a weir or a restriction built in that outlet structure. So water coming in equals water coming out. The city hired us to do a study on Grand Haven's detention basin, and we designed a weir that does the following. The results of the study are for the 2-year, we talk about 2, 10, and 100-year storm frequencies. 2 being what I would consider a light rain in the stormwater field, which you would consider a very heavy rain, and going up to the 100 years is the toe strength. You see once or twice so like that. But the 2 years of storm frequency with the weir that we designed lets out 13% of the current outflow. The 10-year storm frequency lets out 36% of the current outflow, and the 100-year storm frequency lets out 58% of the current 100-year outflow. Stormwater detention for Northtown Park, our project will be provided on the 8-acre arm of the Live with 2 separate connected basin structures on the north and south side of the council. Our detention is sized to serve Northtown Park, and we'll get into that. The questions brought up in just a second. There is the area of one lot, which is adjacent to Pheasant Run, which it has an existing house on it that will remain, and it does drain to Pheasant Drive, but we're not making any improvements to that lot. The remaining 132 lots will be captured and transported our detention. We measurably discharge the rate that is less than or equal to the current development conditions. Lastly, I just want to assure everyone that everything that we have done today follows the rules and procedures set forth by the city. In addition, the remedies that we're proposing for Grand Haven greatly improves downstream stormwater conditions. The staff and independent consultants that you hire and trust are all recommending approval of this preliminary plat until June 3. That being said, I'm more than happy to address any questions. So let's get that first.
Yes.
Mr. Gardner. You're good.
Dave, you mentioned 3 different size weirs depending on the amount of each side.
Well, it's one weir, just a single weir, but as the basin fills up with 2, 10, and 100 weir,
Okay.
that's what I was.
Oh, okay. So the shape of the weir will allow the outflow of those various. Okay. And you said you designed that for the city. Does that mean that it's going to be built by the applicant or built for the city?
I do not know the answer to that. We have, I don't believe that's been determined. I believe that there was an indication that the city had funds to do that. It's a very cost-effective thing to do. Everything, the infrastructure is there, you just go up and form and build 2 small walls.
Well, I understand that, and I know what the weir is, but I am hesitant, and although I'm 100% in favor of this, but I'm hesitant to go forward until I know what's going to happen with that weir, and whether or not the city can build that, because we need to contain the whole idea of this, all this, is to contain that water coming out from Grand Haven. So, Mr. Chairman, yeah.
No, the city did work with Mr. Rodine for design, and as I said, we've done with that, not only the basin, but that weir is just functioning so efficiently. So what we've done, we've got the study, we're working with the HOA, Scott Decker, I believe is the HOA president out there, Property Owners Association president. Not only looking at replacing that weir this fall or early next year, but also doing some work on that drainage easement that enters into that pond, just to kind of take some different measures to prevent erosion, kind of calm the water down. But we're very excited with the report that we've seen. It's actually a fairly simple fix for a rather large problem. And this is a win-win. They come in, take care of a regional problem. We can work together, get this built, and take care of the problems that communities as well. So we'll be working simultaneously with them, so that we can do ourselves their work. Some of it would have to get a contractor through the weir walls, but we plan on, and we have budgeted for the improvements within the grade.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear, because I don't necessarily think it's their responsibility, but I don't want to pass this unless we know that they're going to be fixed. If you're telling us that they will be fixed.
That's correct. Yes, we took the opportunity to have Mr. Golding design this because he was taking in all the stormwater calculations in the region. It made a lot of sense. Steve and I talked about it, we approved the initial design. We reviewed it as staff and as a third-party consultants, and we're very happy with the results. And I think the community will be as well. And like I said, we're communicating that with the community. So,
Can I just address your earlier questions? And I'm sorry to do that direct speed, but the line item in there about our basin is sized for North County. So you have two things play an issue. You have the volume that's required, and that's determined by our improvements. But then you have the weir sizing and how that's measured out and calculated. That incorporates everything upstream. Because where our detention basin is, we're going to get everything upstream flowing through that detention basin. So the volume, when I said that, the volume is based on our improvements. The detention weir will be designed to accommodate everything coming through us, if that makes sense. Thank you.
So does that mean if you don't know exactly when the weirs are going to be built, does that mean there'll be an area there, potentially, before the weirs built, after North Town built out, you'll have potentially more info coming in?
No, I believe that if speaking with the developer, it's always been our intent to make sure that weir is in place before we start our construction. Because that's, to be honest, that's a promise that we've made to the neighbors, that you've got, not a promise, but that's been our selling point, is that you've got a problem, we're willing to fix that problem, even though it's not our problem. We're willing to jump in and, provide easements or access, or whatever we can do on our end to get that resolved. We've always told the neighbors, and Steve has been adamant about, this needs to be done first, and we're in agreement. So I'm sure we can work with the city. We've got obviously 2 more weeks before the next meeting, and we've got construction drawings to go through, so we've got a little bit of time. We'd like to get that issue addressed before we get it first.
Mr. Campbell?
So on the rear, I'm almost separate two different things.
Okay.
Grand Haven, detention basin. Is it a earthen berm weir or an out structure or rear wall, what concrete rear wall?
So in our terminology, we call it the old H style weir. It was what it was intended to be. Right now, in the you have an aerial map? No, in the southwest corner of their detention basin, there is a concrete slab with 2 concrete walls. It's earthen basin all around the detention, but in that corner, there's a concrete slab that's about 20 foot wide with 2 concrete walls that are about 6 foot tall. So there was the intent to build something there. There was, at one time, there was the intent to put a weir that would make that act like a detention basin, but it was never accomplished. So what you have right now is you have a basically a 20 foot wide concrete channel, and you don't have that much capacity for water to come in. You've got much more capacity for water to go out than you come in. So water just goes out of the basin the same way it comes in. It doesn't act like a detention at all.
So now I'm talking about the second situation.
Okay.
Is it going to be earthen berm or concrete wall or In our structure.
In the outlet, it's all earthen berm, but the outlet structure itself will be similar to what we're proposing there. It'll be the old beach style concrete structure. And when I do a small commercial development or whatever, and I've done hundreds of these extension bases over the years, I like to use just a 4x4 concrete box and build the shape into that. There's way too much. Pardon?
And put your notches.
Yes, yeah, but unfortunately, in this situation, we have way too much water between the three-ball property, the Grand Haven, and our site. We have too much water, so it would be a wide concrete structure.
Okay. Well, I want to echo what Mr. Gardner said. I'm 100% honest also. I just kind of get into the details maybe. So I'm not asking any questions to. Look, I don't want to sound like I'm going against you, but I'm not.
No, I don't get a chance to nerd out. City council and planning zone site. I like the opportunity.
Okay. I've got, I think, 2 more questions. That's okay.
Absolutely.
Because I live in Waterford, which is on the northwest, you're on the southeast of the intersection. I'm on the northeast, northwest. And because of the type of C&D soils that we've got, there are a lot of houses in Waterford that are holding water because the crawl space floor, I'll call it, which is gravel or dirt, is lower than the existing grade outside the house. I feel like we should consider, and I don't know if this gets into your maybe where you're at. I feel like we should consider trying to make sure that that floor for those crawl spaces are maybe equal to or a little higher than the outside grade.
It doesn't really get into the little bailiwick of a preliminary plat, but I do understand your point. One thing I would say to that, this owner developer is proposing a very unique to the area type of ICF. Yes, that's correct. ICF, which stands for insulated concrete forms. Most of these homes are going to be complete concrete shells, and a lot of them will be on slab on grade construction. I don't believe ICFs are built with crawl spaces, are they? They can't be. Okay, but I do understand your point. There is a high water table in the area. I know that's a cause for solution.
They go a little late.
And Ozark is kind of unique in one aspect, and I'm not for or against it. I just know that's the way it is. That's causing confusion. Anything west of city center that runs north and south is a street. Anything east of city center that runs north and south is an avenue. I noticed in a lot of the paperwork, it was probably most of the traffic study, that they refer to the road coming out of North Haven on North Road. In several places on the traffic study, it's been referred to as 19th Street, and that's 2 miles down the road from where 19th Avenue is. And I think it's more finished than 19th Avenue documents or whatever. Okay.
If you have a time to draft lawyer, he is prepared. All right. Anybody else in the audience with any comments, or does anyone else have any comments?
I would like to speak to something real quick.
Absolutely, sir. If you mind coming up.
Yeah, sure.
Name and address to the clerk.
Absolutely. My name is Steve Johnson. I live at 1757 West Hillcrest Drive. I am a developer for Silver Spring. If we could bring up the plat
Oh, sure.
Everybody's not concerned with the water. What I want to talk about a little bit is, I am serious about getting Grand Haven fixed to the best of our ability before we get too far into it. It's something that we talked about extensively over the last 2 years, trying to put this project together. And I made that commitment to the folks at Pear Tree and everybody that was concerned about it. The other thing is from the timing of all this, right? I know we talked about 130 months. We're not building 130 months. This is something that we're doing ourselves. That's our intent is to do this. We're talking about 10, 15, maybe 20 homes a year at the max. If we can get it done. We're going to start towards Pheasant and we're going to work our way inward to the 40 acres. So with regard to stormwater work or the volumes for the development as a whole, we won't see that for a number of years down the road. So as far as having the time and the ability to make sure everything is done that we can do at Grand Haven, we have plenty of time to make sure that happens. The full volume of everything. So make that clear. And with regard to Mr. Campbell's comment about the water, my mom had a house on the backside of Grady, and it was terrible. Her cost was for the water. We understand that we're going to engineer each one of the houses based on where we're at with it and the elevations of the water. So we are not concerned with building out a ton of homes overnight. Our goal for this is to build a different type of home to basically showcase the type of home that it is and let people know that there's an option out there. And hopefully other builders will pick up on this because we think there's many benefits to it. So building something that's not done correctly or has inherent problems to it, we're not interested in that. So, do you have any questions for me?
I think starting with phase one after Federal Road is a good thing because you get your attention body first.
Absolutely.
That's the good part. The bad part of it is if you're building 25 homes a year,
somewhere between realistically, we're probably 10 to 15.
okay. So there's potential there for this subdivision construction to be going on for 10 years. Possibility. The bad part of that, the part up toward that's real first is you're going to be tracking construction for several years, in and out, next social houses. What's your plan there?
Yeah, I've been around construction a number of years. I hate seeing mud and stuff go down out the streets, drove through the neighborhoods. We will have a place set up where we can have water. We can hopefully wash the good part off with the tires and stuff before we get out. That absolutely is a so.
Install
Are you planning to have the construction go through grants or grant?
No, ma'am, all the construction should go through the office. Absolutely.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Is anyone else in the audience here speaking on behalf of this bill? Hearing none, this will be held over to the next legislative session. Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Campbell, place to order 3222 on its first reading by title, three, description, all those in favor?
An ordinance amending the municipal code of the city of Ozark, Missouri, by repealing chapter 420, historic preservation in its entirety. Amending chapter 405, zoning regulations, to add language regarding historic preservation overlay districts. And amending chapter 405, to remove language regarding chapter 405.
There's been for a second. Mr. Smith. It's the 11.
Yes, this is an ordinance revision to amend or remove chapter 420 and replace it with the new section, chapter 405. I want to address and keep in mind and emphasize that this does not remove the criteria for historic overlay development criteria within those areas as identified by the commission. This will just redraft the ordinance to create an overlay district, such as an overlay ordinance that removes the ordinance that's in place about regarding a commission and a certified local government. So with this amendment, most of the revisions were just removed references to a commission, the COG, and in that process, however, we kept the same criteria presented for bring developments within this historic overlay district. We also took the opportunity to address the signage. One thing is we found that the prior ordinance that it was lacking or contradicting a little bit of the design guidelines that is in place. So we've amended the section of ordinance to add some criteria about signage, just for clarification. This ordinance revision would create an administrative approval process as we do any other ordinance that's set up today, so that there's not a commission involved in the public hearing process, bringing development in this ordinance. And then I do want to emphasize again, this does remove the requirements for a commission and removes the certified local government COG status. With that, we have to address or answer any questions.
So with removing it, CLG status could temper our ability to choose grants.
Potentially that could hamper the ability to, since I've been here in a long time, I don't know if the city has pursued any grants. One of the struggles we have been having is with the COG. The commissioners are required to do training yearly, and we just plan to keep up with that. Commissioners can do their training.
As a past member of that commission, I have always expressed interest in having some of those decisions and topics that were brought in front of us to be at a staff level. Never actually get to the entire district becoming an expression of staff. So kind of a change for me in my opinion. How the working commission was operating, should operate for residential. So still working it over inside. Any more comments with regards to this?
I think over time, I guess I was on HBC with you years ago, and I think this is kind of where we've all found ourselves at this service better, because it's hard to get people on that level to really do the amount of training, the amount having that kind of dedication to do the job. It's something that really you have to learn a lot about, really understand, trying to achieve without getting too much of the weeds on things that are not relevant to historical preservation. I think this overlay district doing it this way, preserve, we're trying to preserve that. I do think that it's a good idea to try to have a order committee and be able to do it, but I think the line really carry it out. Better way to look forward. It's still preserved. Still an option.
I don't necessarily disagree with your comment. I know that one of the difficult things when you have doing something this time is the comment that comes forward is preface, I believe, or I think. And sometimes the I believe don't necessarily matter. I think don't necessarily matter. What is the law? What is the correct thing that we're supposed to be doing? What is our authority? So sometimes those are the things that are said in those meetings this bill. So I do agree with you. It should streamline the mechanism. I think taking a human element out of it. Mixed feelings, but ultimately, I think. Any other board members? Anybody here in the audience to speak on this topic? Anyone with any citizens? I think we did. We did. We are in the team. We are live. So there's no one on Zoom. So there are no more comments regarding this bill. And we go a little to the next decision.
Move to the place of bill 3283 on its first reading by title.
Second. Motion was made by Alderman Flores, second by Alderman Gardner, to place bill 3283 on its first reading by title description. All those in favor?
An ordinance authorizing the city to enter into contracts with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for signed program participation.
Jody, there. You ready?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So just the other day, really, just about a week or so ago, well, I guess on July 14th, we received information from ODOT that there was a group from our school district, which is the junior ROTC, who just that had interest in placing what's called award signs on our city limits. And those award signs that you've seen for on the bottom of the city limit signs, they say, champions of basketball, volleyball, whatever that may be. So that kind of started us looking at the different places that we had these signs. The main one that everybody thinks looks like it's the one that would have highway 65. Well, the reason why the MoDOT got hold of us is because anytime that you put an award sign on a city limit sign, that's an agreement between MoDOT and the city of Ozark, because very technically that's the city of Ozark's sign. MoDOT puts it up, MoDOT maintains it, it's their right of way, but very technically it's considered our sign. So anything that happens to that sign is an agreement with the city of Ozark. Now, the signs are typically those things that are associated with school events, again, like basketball, volleyball, this teaches the national or your ROTC. The reason why they wanted to, then it like just a few days after we were notified that there was I think a supporter or maybe a mother of one of the kids that were in the junior ROTC requested this, and MoDOT explained to them how they can go through the process. So I know how passionate the mayor is about this, and it will any time in the district when anything, it's just a very good thing. But in particular, we want to make sure that you didn't leave the school out or find out who you want to participate, because those signs do cost money. So there are two different sizes, and they put these different sizes on. I know there's a sign that says part of it. It's not my sign. MoDOT said we did say but we had different signs out there on Highway 65, and they said, look, you can get the conventional roads are $520 per foot tall, and the freeways and expressways, which is what Highway 65 is considered, those are $1,000 a piece. Maybe 2 days after we received this notification that there's an interest, we see another email that says, oh, and by the way, we just got notified by federal highways that this is no longer going to be allowed. And until you get it, unless you have an agreement in our hands by August 1st, there will never be any more signs on the city limits. We're going to be away across the country. Well, the rule is that when you sign this agreement, the sign goes up, you have a 10-year timeline between the time the sign goes up or the contract is signed, which is within a few weeks. 10 years at that time to stay on it. So typically what happens is the older signs move off, the newer signs move on, as long as you keep putting national orders, I guess. And in our case, with our school district, that's what happens. Well, then we learned that, look, this is your last shot, and you've got to get something in place. So we were moving forward because we're going to put this on the agenda because we knew we had a deadline of August 1st. You're not really committed to putting up a sign. You're not committed to paying any money, and nothing really moves forward. You're just authorizing staff to be able to, or the mayor, I don't remember how the ordinance is written, but you're authorizing us to enter into this with MoDOT in case there is a sign that's put up. Then they send back something 2 days later and say, hey, we added another month, now you got until September. So we only have until September 1st to make this decision. The reason why I tell you all this is because this, even though it's our agreement, it's not something that we budgeted. We haven't talked about it. We didn't know this was going to be something that the city could potentially spend money on. And that's why I turned it over to the mayor, because I wanted to make sure the mayor had the opportunity to visit the school, and I can let you share what you found out from the school. I think that's about where we were. So this agreement, I'll stop talking. It does allow for us to move forward if you want to. If you don't want to, then these signs, I've been told that the signs have expired that are on the correct state of the sun, and they will be down before the end of the year. So there will be no more signs. But if we get this in place, there could be a couple more for the next 10 years on whichever one's going. Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you.
So yeah, I had preliminary discussions with the school district, had no solid confirmation of answer, whether or not they would like to participate in the funding of such a sign. They were, one of the conversations I had, they were interested in hopefully getting the signs from MoDOT.
And they said you didn't have those. There are signs, so you're more than welcome to give them to the school or whatever they hold.
So, yeah, just following up with, the citizens, I think it was more than, I think one initiated the conversation with both of them, numerous parents. The original conversation linked to the college national championship. And so I thought it was at least, my place to get the ball rolling as far as, is this something we can do? Is this something we want to participate in? Last time, one of our teams will accomplish a feat as big as this has ever happened. Junior ROTC world, each week of the national championship. So I just want to make sure that we had everything in place, provided we wanted to participate. We could give the maybe participation in the school as a cost share, or boosters as a cost share, or if it's just something we love that was a good gesture for us to do on behalf of the kids that represented us across the nation all the time from our community. So Mr. Childers got the paperwork ready to go, so we're ready. We don't have to have this ordinance approved until September 1st, so we can go to its natural cycle. Should this be something we want to have ready to roll at the time?
And by August 2nd, when it comes back to you, we should, if we're going this direction, we should be able to bring back more information, know whether or not the school wants to participate, at least let the board know, hey, this would be the potential cost, and here's the number of signs, and this is where they'll go. So you guys can make a decision at that time.
All right. And Mr. Gardner will link first, so.
Is that the time in which we will like some contract? It's when we determine if there's something to apply for. I mean, the way I read it is we're approving the contracts, and it's just blanks. So that you'll have the work here, they not use this.
We have, but this is just the first reading, the first reading.
I can answer
All right, let me cycle through. Right.
your question of why does the contract place? Well, the MoDOT, or Missouri Highway Transportation Commission, and the CFOs are two political subdivisions of the state. And when you have a contract between two political subdivisions, the authorizing agency typically has to grant authority to enter the contract. This contract, as Steve explained, the dollar values are well within his threshold. If it wasn't a political subdivision, that he could just authorize that purchase. So what we would be authorizing would just be the form of the contract, which you have, and then details to be added later. This is just a necessary first step to ensure we have that authority because they are a political subdivision.
That makes sense, and they're very involved in the previous conversation, but I was just a little, reply. So I'm good, thank you.
All right, do you want to turn yours off over there? So that cycle, one of these two, well, I suppose it's already.
Well, I think you just answered my question. I agree with Mr. Gardner. was definitely asking, I can't go there, so. So,
Yeah, and we just don't know that information yet. Like Dave said, Ms. Callaway said that you're just authorizing us really just to the next step.
I believe the way the ordinance is drafted is that you're approving a contract substantially in the form of the document you have before you. So the terms that are legally binding the city of Ozark are been approved by your attorney, and that's what we're asking you for authority to enter into. Then anything obviously would exceed the threshold that the city administrator would trigger an editor to come back. So these blanks are unusual, but they aren't, considered to be
all right, Mr. Kennedy, you're up.
Okay, so, I'm sorry to say, but I do still have one. In this contract, I don't know if it's the same as the contract we're under now, the ones that not expire, but in this contract, there is a provision for once that 10 years expires, then payment will be determined at that time if we want to go another 10 years.
Yeah, and that's what I understand is it's only good for 10 years because once this 10 years, and I mean, maybe the
You
contract.
mean the current one or this one? This one.
This, yeah.
Look at page 2 of the top of the page, paragraph 2. And it would be the, the four lines up, where the next to last sentence is. If you read that, it says payment for subsequent 10-year periods will be determined and made at the beginning of such periods. Maybe that says 10 years from now, if we want to go longer, the payment for that would be determined.
I think they know that this needs to, I mean, we can bring that up and then they just need to change their contract because we're saying that you will not get that. So I think that actually would be something they would need to enter for their own contract. The federal highway is telling about, you know, yeah, you get 10 more years, and if you don't have this in place, the payment submitted to MoDOT by September 1st, you get no more years.
I'm assuming this is the original contract. And now the rules have changed, so it has to be.
Yeah. We certainly bring that up to them, but you're right, I mean, there is not going to be another 10 years. It's just done. So, and I guess they would just notify this at the state just the other day. I think it's pretty new to them. It is odd that I would get this, hey, you were put a sign and 2 days later, oh, by the way, you got to go off first. So it was a little strange, but that's why we're.
Any other questions regarding this bill? Does anyone in the audience here speak to that this bill? I have to do it. There is no one on student this evening. So hearing no other comments, this bill will be held to the next legislative session. All right. Second reading, final passage of bills.
Move that we place number 3275 on the second reading by title.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, second by Alderman Houston, to place bill number 3275 on the second reading by title only. All those in favor?
An ordinance reaffirming procedure to disclose potential conflicts of interest in compliance with Missouri law.
Got anything? Any questions regarding this bill? Oh.
Can I assume that the clerk will let us know when or if we need to fill out these annual forms?
Yes.
It says something about biannual. Yeah. Certainly every 2 years, but then I thought I read somewhere that said every year. Yeah. I don't know.
Yes. The conflict of interest we file with Missouri Ethics Commission, we file that every other year, that you and the elected officials will file. In Or if you do not have any conflicts, I let them know that.
Mr. Gardner.
So they only file if there's a conflict, because when we filed for office this last election, need to fill that out.
Correct. Yes, if you do have a conflict, you can miss city, it's over a certain threshold.
Thank you.
I keep up with the red light. Sorry. No, he just thinks it's almost good time. All right, no other comments? Go for the
I move that we adopt bill 3275 as ordinance 21-06.
second. Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Poston to adopt bill number 3275 as ordinance number 21-060. May I get a roll call, vote, please?
Alderman Campbell.
Aye.
Alderman Flores.
Aye.
Alderman Poston.
Aye.
Alderman Alder. Aye. Alderman Galloway is absent. Alderman Gardner.
Aye.
We have five votes, motion carries.
Right, I move that we put bill 3276 on second reading by title only.
Motion was made by Alderman Gardner, seconded by Alderman Flores, next bill number 3276 by title description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance authorizing the city to enter into a contract for the construction of certain improvements related to the transportation alternative program grant 820.
Mr. Parsons, do you have any updates? Questions from the board, comments from the board? All right.
I move that we adopt bill 3276 as ordinance 21-06.
Motion was made by Alderman Gardner, seconded by Alderman Flores to adopt bill number 3276 as ordinance number 21-061. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Alderman Flores.
Aye.
Alderman Galloway is absent. Alderman Alder. Aye. Alderman Campbell.
Aye.
Alderman Gardner.
Aye.
Alderman Poston. Aye. We have five votes, motion carries.
That's right. I move that we put bill 3277 on the second reading by title only.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Gardner, seconded by Alderman Campbell, place bill number 3277 on the second reading by title only. All those in favor?
An ordinance authorizing the city to enter into a contract for the construction of certain improvements related to the transportation alternative program grant 821.
Second verse, then on the first, on the sidewalks. All right. Any additional comments, questions about this grant?
Right, I move that we adopt bill 3277 as ordinance 21-062.
Motion was made by Alderman Gardner, seconded by Alderman Poston to adopt bill number 3277 as ordinance number 21-062. May I get a roll call vote, please?
Alderman Campbell.
Aye.
Alderman Poston.
Aye.
Alderman Galloway is absent. Alderman Flores.
Aye.
Alderman Gardner.
Aye.
Alderman Alder. Aye. We have five votes, motion carries.
I move that we put bill 3278 on the second reading by title only.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Gardner, seconded by Alderman Campbell, place bill number 3278 on the second reading by title only. All those in favor?
An ordinance authorizing the city to enter into a contract for the construction of certain improvements related to the transportation alternative program grant 822.
One more time.
Okay, I move that we adopt bill 3278 as ordinance 21-063.
Second. Motion was made by Alderman Gardner, seconded by Alderman Poston to adopt bill number 3278 as ordinance number 21-063. get a roll call, please?
Yes, Alderman Flores. Aye. Alderman Gardner is absent. Alderman Alder.
Carter.
Alderman Galloway is muted. Yes. Alderman Alder. Aye. Alderman Campbell.
Aye.
Alderman Preston. Gardner.
Ledley,
You have 5 votes, the motion carries.
again, that activity is very good work, appreciate it. Sidewalks are kind of awesome. All right, report off the boards and committees, Mr. Childers.
I really just have one thing that I wanted to clarify or have a chief verify for me. At the last meeting, Alderman posted you asked about, purpose of these vehicles that we were making, and within that ordinance, there was an area for public safety. And, so with that, let's make the chief, and chief, you can come up and tell him if you want. We just want to make sure that we had the contract in place, we've gone through the proper process, and we have done that at the beginning of the year. So, that is in place. So, that was done for some the contracts where we already went through the process. So if and when you use it, it's there. Go ahead.
So we put out our update for police vehicles at the first of the year. We awarded that bid as we do every year. We did enter into contract with those aren't business to provide those updates for us.
I can tell you the question you had with it. But, so we took the proper steps. That's what I figured you asked that and we're getting back.
Yeah, I think we saw that in the contract there, but we approved this contract, or we should, so that's why I asked.
Well, it's a good question, and I want to make sure that we follow this, that's probably what I think we did, so that's good to know.
All of us are part of it. All of us, we got promoted. All of us, I don't know, Missouri. Mr. Smith, that is written report that he made, any questions with regards to that?
I do want to clarify, at the last meeting, Alderman Alder asked about the dog pound, I can find out some more information about that. They're upgrading or replacing the electric meter, that's all they're doing. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and get answers the ones I can answer.
Mr. Parsons, are you good? Anything from that side?
No.
All right, miscellaneous comments, announcements, members of the board, all of them there. Anything from you guys? There is no reason to go into closed session this evening. I will wait until another day. So if there's a motion to adjourn. Or motion is made by Alderman Campbell, second by Alderman Alder to adjourn. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, everyone.